Welcome, welcome everyone to our newest episode on the Living Life Naturally podcast, where you learn about all things that are more natural for your body, that are so much more healthy for you. And of course, if you want to join my Facebook group where we learn all about holistic health and wellness, energy, the way that you eat, I will put that in the show notes for the Energized Healthy Women's Club. So today I have with me all the way from Sydney, Australia, Gabrielle Pimstone, and she worked in a corporate psychology career for 27 years, but a chance podcast encounter altered the course of her life. And she is now an energy coach, helping those feeling burnt out and stuck. And she teaches powerful energy techniques for self-healing and navigating major life transitions, so people can live with renewed purpose and passion, which is really what the holistic journey is all about. If we don't have that energy in our life, it can really make our life miserable. So welcome. I'm looking forward to our chat today.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and I'm also looking forward to it. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
So for those of you that are not watching this on YouTube, there's a beautiful backdrop here of elephants that that I just love. And so tell our listeners where you're joining us from.
Well, I'm joining you from Australia, but the elephants are actually really significant because I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa.
Ah, okay.
So I've got Africa in my blood, and so that's a particularly poignant quote, but also the imagery really speaks to me as well, and speaks to who I am and where I'm from.
Yes, I get that now.
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about all things relating to energy and why it can be transformative in your life. So tell me, first of all, I know briefly you tell us a bit about it in your bio, but tell us a little bit about your own journey.
Okay. Well, it started when I was really young. At age 8, I had my first really vivid dream, and it got me out of bed in the middle of the night, and I started capturing it and trying to understand it. And I guess that started a journey of, a love for the human psyche and psychology, but I also had an interest in spirituality. Of course, that was put on the back burner. And when it came to studying in university, it was a no-brainer. I went in, studied psychology, and kicked off a really incredible career, a quarter of a century, nearly 30 years of, work that initially, it was initially really intellectually stimulating, loved it, but actually as time went on, I grew out of the shadow side of the corporate world, bureaucracy that stopped me from really making the kind of impact I wanted, and politics and competitiveness that, really slowed everything down. And that's where the energy and focus went to. And I remember one of my ex-bosses described dysfunction as when you have 2 or more people working together. And I was working in organizations of like 35,000, 60,000 people.
Wow.
It was hair-raising. And so actually I had my moment in 2020 during the pandemic. I was in a leadership role in a bank of all places. I've always kind of suffered from anxiety. The anxiety was through the roof. Part of that was also because I was becoming perimenopausal. And so my inherent anxiety just kind of really came to the surface. Took myself off for a walk one Sunday morning, listened to a podcast of a woman talking about her anxiety. And I realized here I am, teaching other people in organizations how to be their most, step into their full potential, their most functional selves. And here I am, I was a wreck. And so I felt like I was in this invisible spiritual prison. And the bars were anxiety, dread, trepidation, feeling small, all of those things. And I decided on that day that actually I needed to step out and really free myself from this ongoing cycle of anxiety and find a path that would be more nurturing for me. And particularly as I was moving into a different stage of my life. I was 50 at the time, and, it really was a moment of reckoning for me.
I think a lot of people find that when they step into that perimenopausal situation, and it's a great way to put it, a day of reckoning, because we all come to that junction in the road and have to decide some really pretty deep things that you think that you've gone through your life, you think everything's just going to be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way. There can be so many wonderful openings for us when we hit this stage of life. Yes,
exactly. And one of the questions that I asked myself in the days that followed was, who would I be if I wasn't anxious all the time? And I'd actually never, it was like a question that tapped into my identity, because I was so identified with being this stressed out, highly strung person and corporate player. And actually, I wasn't sure who I would be if I let that go. And, the answers that came to me really led me to my purpose, which led me to doing the work that I'm doing now. And I guess the message for everyone is it's really, I know it's a cliche, but it is never too late to change. I grew up in a household. My mom is incredible, but her whole life she was like, oh no, I'm too old to do this, no, I'm too old to do that. And she's been saying it for decades. And so I'm a person who really eschews that. Like, I honestly feel that if I can make a significant life change at 50 and I was stuck, anyone can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Even my mother-in-law, she went back to college when she was something like 58. She really didn't have any aspirations to do anything career-wise, because they were comfortably off and she liked her life, but she just wanted to go back and get more education.
Yes. And so it's interesting because I feel like I've spoken to a number of predominantly women, actually mainly women, who in the last few months they've hit like the 50 or the 50-year thing. And it's a very existential time in our lives. And a lot of them have actually become my clients now. And they're talking about big life transitions. Sometimes it's career, sometimes it's relationship, sometimes just an internal, the kind of rejigging who I am in the world, how I show up. It's a catalyst. The year, when we hit our 50s, it's a big wake-up call. And of course, all the physiological changes that come with us being in our 50s as women make it even kind of really, in my experience, really just intensified what was already there.
Yes. So we're talking specifically about energy, because you are known as an energy coach.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you learned, what your personal transformation was when it specifically came to energy.
Okay, that's such a great question. I mean, I've been in psychology I've worked in the field of organizational psychology for nearly 30 years. I'd been in therapy, spent a large part of my adult life in therapy because of the work that I did, but also because I'm a little bit of a self-help junkie. It was wonderful. I learned an incredible a great deal about myself. But what I noticed when I was in 2020 and I was highly strung, I was stressed out, I wasn't sleeping, was that I was still stuck in the same pattern, which was anxiety. I couldn't shake it. And I knew that I needed to change tack. And what happened was, a short while after that podcast, I actually resigned from my job the next day, but a little while later, something came up on my Instagram feed, which was an advert for one of those 3-day workshops, they marketing events, but the guy was talking about energy in such a compelling way. And I signed up, and he landed up being my teacher for 18 months. What I learned on that weekend that really made me pay attention to the topic of energy was that, energy runs the show. I worked in the field, I still do, of, mindsets, thoughts, beliefs, emotions, the stories we tell ourselves, actions, decisions. actually all of these are, if you break it down, it's really just an energetic frequency. A thought is an energetic frequency. An emotion holds a very powerful energetic frequency. And what I realized that is, if I wanted to really make the big changes in my life that I knew I had to make, I needed to work at an energetic level. So if I spoke about my emotions any longer, I was going to go mad. What if I was able to go back to the inception point, the root, where that belief or emotional kind of the baggage began, somewhere deep in my childhood. And if I I learned how to release the energetic root of that, then everything speeds up. And so that's what I learned. Instead of talking about my issues, which I think is important, you've got to know what's tripping you up. You can expedite the healing process if you work at an energetic level. If you go back, find the inception point, the event where it all began and compounded, and you release the energetic root of that issue that's been tripping you up. And so we've all got these energy blocks. The stuff happens to us in childhood, and because we are young and we don't have the cognitive capacity to process what's happening to us, we don't release the energy. It just remains with us. So if we bullied in the playground, for example, we don't know what to do with that. We may get a hug from our mum, but we are not processing the event. The energy around that gets trapped somewhere starts in our energetic body. And then over time, when more and more events happen, it compounds, it grows until it's a really giant invisible handbrake that's holding us back.
Yeah, I can so relate to that, because I don't know how things were for you in South Africa or even Australia, but I was brought up in that era in England where children should be seen and not heard, and you don't talk about your emotions. It's just not something you do. And so it's taken me, when I first came to the States, it was that was another part of the transition that I had to make, because everybody was so different and emotions were just blurbed out, and and still I was like very inward, and it's taken me this holistic journey to really learn how to release some of that, and really how far back, as you say, some of that stuff can go. And
goes far back.
Yes. I am amazed when I think back, because my earliest memory, I was only less than 18 months old, and I was in my crib or cot, as you would probably know it as.
Yes.
And I was screaming with my arms out for my mum and dad, just screaming, because I had this feeling of loneliness, and it took them forever to come in that room for me. And I thought, I was 18 months. What difference does that make? But it does.
Wow. I mean, there's so much in what you're saying. It's extraordinary that you have a memory from that. Yeah. Yes. I mean, there's a part of me that is envious of that, because I actually don't have a memory. My memory starts after my father passed away, which was when I was 9. But what we're talking about is the depth of these blocks. And actually, the truth is they can start before we're even born. They can start in utero. I've worked with somebody who was actually a gentleman who went through life with a repetitive pattern of being very clingy and needy in relationships and turning people off, very overbearing. And what we worked out and what we released was actually an energy block that started when he was in his mother's womb. He was not a planned pregnancy. He was the 3rd child. Parents weren't planning to have more than 2. His mum fell pregnant, and she went through a whole process while he was in utero. And the process was, like, I don't want this baby. And eventually she kind of accepted it. But that energy was taken in and absorbed by this fetus, and developed into a lifelong pattern of feeling rejected or feeling not good enough, not wanted. And that set up a very dysfunctional and unhealthy pattern in relationships. So actually it can start in the womb, can also be handed down from generation to generation. So in the lineage, there's an energetic pattern around, and I see it often with money. People struggling to make money and not really understanding why, only to find out that actually their mother's mother and father, their grandparents, and, it was all passed down. And so these things are complex. But with the work that I do, I'm able to really find that inception point. It doesn't have to be in childhood. It can be in any time point in time on their timeline. And we release that. It's very powerful.
Mm. So what are some of the tools or specific exercises that you use with people?
Well, I use something that's called advanced sacred geometry. So I can't, so what that is in nature, there are high frequency patterns, like energetic patterns. If you look in like the center of a flower, for example, you see these divinely proportioned patterns. You see it in honeycomb. You see it in our DNA, which is spiral. You see it in our cells, which are spherical. And I work with advanced patterns, and they hold energetic frequency. And I teach people how to use them as well. And when you use these energetic structures, they really are able to kind of do the work in many ways. Or it opens you up to hold more energy so that you can do the work in a more potent way. But you don't have to be an energy master to master your energy. There are things that, we can all do every single day. And, little things like, I'm very into sound, I'm clairaudience, so sound is important to me. And, the solfeggio frequencies are incredibly powerful. If you've got Spotify, just Google them, the different frequencies. And often what I do is I'll run a bath and I'll play a high frequency solfeggio kind of frequency, and I'll dedicate that bath to healing. And what's happening is I'm listening to the energetic frequencies coming in. Water is a conductor of energy. And so I'm actually healing as I'm doing nothing and lying in the bath, basically. You can even go to sleep listening to that frequency. There's small things that we can do. Nature has got bountiful healing properties. I'm somebody who loves the elemental of fire. So I spend a lot of time in, outdoors in the sun. For other people, it's water. For other people, it's earth energy. And so the invitation is to really get out into nature and use the power of the energy of nature to actually do a lot of the heavy lifting for you as well. So there are lots of things that we can do simply to manage and master our energy more effectively.
And how would one know that they've got these blocks in place? What might be some of their experiences to give them a clue that something's going on?
Well, I think the biggest clue then is that when you're stuck in a repetitive pattern and you can't really work out why. And like in my case, you've tried everything and it's just not shifting. And common patterns, things like chronic loneliness. In my case, ongoing anxiety. As mentioned earlier, always having money worries. You mentioned earlier not being able to speak up, finding self-expression, a block around there, issues in relationships, procrastination. So these are repetitive cycles that we can't figure out what they are, and we certainly can't shift them. That's always a real clue that you've got an energy block. Yeah.
And when you're thinking... I'm sorry. Well, when you're thinking generationally, how would you even know? Because many of us, so like I have no grandparents, actually have no parents left. And so how would you even find out some of these generational things that have been passed down?
So the way that I work and my spiritual gifts, my intuition is activated. Okay, so I'm an intuitive work. I work intuitively as well. So I'll actually pick up. So sometimes it's with real granularity, and sometimes it's a little bit more vague. Like I might say to the person, something happened, there's something you're carrying from your father's line around money. I'm just giving you a silly example. And I can't, and it's general. Other times I'll go specifically in and I'll be able to say, you know what, your when you were in the womb, my sense is that your mother experienced A, B, and C, or I'll, share with somebody. Like an example was working with somebody, and I just got this image of a young boy sitting on a dusty road, and I really got a visceral feeling of what he was going through, why he was sitting there. And when I debriefed, the person spoke about that incident being when he was young at church. He ran out of church. He wasn't sitting on a dusty road, but it was a path somewhere. And so I can sometimes pick it up with granularity, or sometimes I just get a felt sense. So, and then if somebody is alive, then you can go and corroborate.
Yeah.
If they're not, then we work with what has come up for me, and they tell me whether they feel it's plausible or not.
So I'm sure that can be so very rewarding for you to see, because that's one of the things that excites me, even from a holistic health practitioner point of view. When you see some of those blocks being moved out of the way, it's just
Incredible.
an incredible, yes.
I mean, I can feel when I found the block and I've released it. And sometimes it takes more than one session. Sometimes it takes one session. Sometimes it takes a few sessions, but I can viscerally feel the block being released. And when it was done on me, it was interesting. I could actually, this was the first healing that was group healing that my teacher did on us. I actually felt like a comet shooting out of my third eye. It was a block releasing. It was a block releasing. And some people that I've worked on have had similar sensations where, for example, I've been working in their throat chakra and they have felt they've had to cough, or they've felt something release, or in their solar plexus, they felt like a tingling sensation of energy moving. So you can feel it when it happens, and it's very satisfying, as you put it. Yeah.
Seeing lives transformed is just so wonderful.
It really is wonderful, wonderful. And the other thing that I focus on in my practice is not just getting the person healed, but helping the person enjoy the process. Because so many of us kind of shy away from it. We're scared to look at our past. We're scared to look at ourselves. There's so much fulfillment and joy and satisfaction in those aha moments when we start to join the dots in our lives. And I help people really find gratification in the process, because I love it so much. And we are all motivated by progress in our life, and this process is set up to help you progress, and that can be a very compelling aspect of the journey, which I like to tap into as well.
So would you say that you prefer to work with people online? I'm assuming that you do, as opposed to in person. Either way.
I do all my work online, because I work with people from all over the world. Interesting, in the last week or so, I got somebody sign up as one of my coaching programs. She's based in Sydney, and she said to me, "Oh, do I come to you?" And I said, "I prefer. It's probably best not to, for a number of reasons, because when I'm working on you, you can feel if I'm kind of, my hands are around your head. I want you to be in the most meditative space possible." The other thing is, when you work on you at an energetic level, it could be exhausting. I don't want people getting into a car and driving after they've, had a deep healing with me. So what I've got a sacred geometry, a particular structure that allows me to bring their energetic body in front of me. And it houses the energetic body. There's no other way to put it. And I work on the energetic body as if they were standing in front of me. That's how I do it. And it's actually more powerful. I had someone come to me once, also based in Sydney. They insisted on coming. And I ended up doing the work in another room of the house. So, because it's just easier. It's just easier for everyone. And I don't want you focusing on my hand movements and kind of, balancing your chakras. I don't want you, I just want you to have a transcendent experience.
And is the one example of what was maybe the most difficult energy to move? Like, are there differences in the types of energy?
Oh, yes, I can read energy immediately. Like yesterday, I started working on somebody for the first time, and their energy felt very compartmentalized. I can't explain it in any other way. Like other people's energy can feel very tight. Other people's energy can feel all over the show, very loose and fluid. So I can read the energy, which is helpful for people to know what their energy feels like, because that actually is what we project out into the world, ultimately.
Right.
So, yeah. So, but the hardest it's happened about 2, maybe 3 times only. And I've worked with a lot of people where I actually can't read somebody's energy. Now that's interesting.
Yes.
And what that always tells me is that the person is so close that they want to do the work, but they are too defended. I can't get through that defense. And so what I've done in those circumstances is I've done a generic healing. So I'm not able to pinpoint, where I should go, but I'll just clear every chakra. I'll set the intention that we are healing what is in the highest good for them to release in that moment, because I can't really pinpoint what's going on. And undoubtedly healing happens, but I'm not able to really pinpoint. I can't find the root. And that's what I share with them afterwards. And, and the readiness is all, it's everything. So what I've actually instituted is a process where I spend, 45 minutes on the phone with you before you sign up. And I get a sense of whether you are ready or not, because I don't want to waste your time. Certainly don't want to waste my time. I don't want to be in a business where I'm, not making an impact, where I'm saying, look, let me give you a refund. I don't want to be in that kind of a business. So it's the readiness is all. And, Shakespeare said that, and it's true. And so, but it's happened very infrequently. I mean, as I say, only 2 or 3 times. And then I'm very honest with the person. I say I wasn't able to read your energy.
So if people wanted to have a session with you, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, there are multiple ways on my website. As set up one of those vision calls with me. It's a 2-way process of assessing. You'll assess whether I'm for you. I'll assess whether you're the right client for me. You could do that. You could connect with me on Instagram. I'm quite active there. I'm active on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I mean, there are social media at my age.
Yeah,
I've had to really embrace social media.
Well, I'm the same way. I'll have to check you out on LinkedIn, because I have so many connections, but I know very few of them, and I would love to connect with people that I know.
Right. Okay. Well, I've already tried to connect with you there, and also on Instagram. So
I'm very bad at getting into LinkedIn and answering connection things. It's not been one of the things I've focused on with LinkedIn.
Yes.
So that's been one of my things this year, that I'm trying to do better with LinkedIn, because I think there are a lot of people in the corporate world that really need help.
Actually, most of my clients have come from the corporate world. Most of them.
Well, I think working in the corporate world myself for so many years, we don't realize how much we're lacking until you've been to the other side. You come out the other side and you realize you've had your aha moments, and it's like, I can't believe I've lived all those years like this.
I know. But there's so many patterns I experience people working in the corporate world. Anxiety is the obvious one, and a lack of purpose and passion is another one. Loneliness, isolation.
Yeah, I'm sure even more so after COVID, because people truly were very isolated.
Very much so. And I don't know about America, but in Australia, there's been so much resistance about going back to work that most organizations are still in this hybrid space. And, it's got its positives, but it's certainly got its negatives. I mean, it's terribly isolated.
Yes. Especially for people like me who tend to be a little introverted, it's very easy to sit back and begin to enjoy
Yes.
not having to put on your smiley face and
Exactly.
but it's not very healthy for you either. And I've learned that more and more as the years have passed since COVID, and have really tried this year reaching out more to people and being more social.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So I really appreciate you giving us all your wisdom. That's some absolutely wonderful work that you're doing, and I so appreciate that. People in our world need that now more than ever. And thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Well, Lynn, I want to thank you for hosting a podcast and all you're doing to get voices out there. So thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you joining me all the way from Sydney, even though it's only 5 o'clock here and you're the next day in the morning.
Into the future.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much.
You have been listening to the Living Life Naturally podcast, where we're on a mission to inform, inspire, and encourage women to live their best life confidently, joyfully, and freely from what's been holding them back. For show notes and free resources, visit holistic-healthandwellness.com. And I'd be delighted if you'd follow us on socials to connect further. If you enjoyed this show, why not share it with your friends? If you found good value, chances are they will too. And of course, a 5-star review on iTunes is always greatly appreciated, as much as I appreciate you listening. So until next time, live life naturally and joyfully.